Only get our good sides. Just kidding.
I got it.
No pressure. All right, so thank you all for coming. Andy Graff is here today, and Dana Perino, our favorite. And we are very excited that you're here for lots of reasons. First of all, you drove here from Ohio. I feel like I do more driving back and forth to Ohio than anybody, so I'm excited that you did it. It's a great drive. Anytime you want to come, just come. We're excited to talk about the book. We have a lot of people from our book club here. It's our book club book for June. Why am I cannot keep the month straight? I swear. I'm having a really hard time and wanting to skip to July for some reason. But it's our June book club, so we will let you know what happens. We'll be honest, it's a rough book club. Woo. But we'll let you know.
It's like 60 people.
It's like 60 people, and it's fun. So we'll let you know what happens. So I told them to try to ask questions at the end of questions that we know the book club's going to ask. Like, why did he make it end this way or something like that? But when you take a marriage that's already not so great, and you put everybody in a Winnebago, and you head them north to try to keep a whitewater rafting dilapidated place running, only good things are going to happen. So far I'm reading it thinking, am I that loud of an eye roller that the wife is? I'm trying to work on that. And I will tell you one other thing. When I was 10 maybe, there are 6 children in our family, and we drove to Florida in that exact same Winnebago, the Brave.
Yeah.
And we all came back. We didn't think Jill was going to come back, I gotta tell you, which we let her in on the way back anyway. But it was a very interesting, long ride. So I'm very curious how it ends. And the fact that, of course, there's a flashy other whitewater rafting team that really knows what they're doing, and they're not high all day. So we'll see what happens. But thank you so much for coming. Dana is here because she loved this book so much. So anything that Dana gets behind, 99.9% of the time we agree.
Except for that one.
So we've got one that we don't. But all right, so thanks for coming, guys.
There was a big one. There was one where I was like, how could she like this book? But generally we do. So anyway, thanks for coming. And it's nice to have like a smaller crowd to meet. I mean, we can certainly, if Tyrus is here, there's a gazillion people here. But this for me has become really what I would love to do all day, which is read and talk about books. And my colleagues don't always appreciate it when I'm on the 5, but they do admire it because they know that there's this big world out there that you can learn about. And I wanted to introduce you to Andy. I wanted to meet him, and just to tell you how we got connected. Raft of Stars. This is his first novel, his debut book. It was highly acclaimed. It's got some great blurbs. Parade magazine did a piece on it. USA Today called it one of the best reads of the year. And I saw that list somewhere, like maybe on Instagram or something. And I was like, oh, let me try it. So I read the book. I loved it so much. I posted about it on Instagram and tagged him, and then he sent me a note, and that's how we connected. And he served in Afghanistan in the Air Force for us. Came back and he went to the Iowa Writers Seminar, the best way to put it, University of Iowa, and he started working on this, right? So I wanted to have him talk a little bit about that as well, because I'm fascinated about how do you even get started. I think a lot of readers always think like you might have a book in your mind that you could imagine, but you don't know where to get started, and that really, this seminar really helped him. He said it was one of the best 2 years of his life. So this book is, I call it Hardy Boys, but with an adult edge a little bit. What I found out today is that it is marketed by his publisher as young adult safe. So if you have young people in your life, especially, I think it's very, very good for boys. I think he nails female characters very well in the way that we think and talk and imagine how you would maybe do that. If it was the reverse, if I was writing for a man, I don't know if I would do it as well as Andy does. This book is a fast-paced adventure. He knows whitewater rafting and the outdoors, and he really takes you on a journey outside, which I love. So that was the first book. The second book is True North, and it came out, when did it come out? 3 months ago?
January.
In January, and because we'd had a connection, he sent me a galley copy, so that's the early copy before they go to final print. You know what's amazing? Usually when people do that, I will find at least one error. Your books are very clean. There's like not one spelling error, like not one problem, and I couldn't put it down. Percy, you're on camera. Percy. And this one I wouldn't call young adult safe necessarily, but I think it's like for all adults. And he'll do a little reading about it as well. But I'm gonna give him the microphone now, just as we start talking about how did you even. Well, first tell people where you grew up and how you grew up, because I think that is an interesting part of the story of how you get to where you are now. And then what it was like to come back from the war and to then embark on this new chapter, which is a pretty remarkable one.
Thank you, Dana, so much. Thank you for the hospitality. It's really exciting to be here. Came in from Ohio. Thank you, Kelly. Where's Kelly?
She's up at the front.
Thank you so much for the invite. This is a great shop, and what a wonderful town. Yeah, I learned this morning on the beach, I think I learned that a horseshoe crab is actually an arachnid. Yeah. And I also learned that Percy, there is no end to his enthusiasm for tennis balls. Whatsoever. Yeah, so thanks so much. I wanted to talk a bit about the genesis of these two books and how I got there. And you talked about that, how did you begin, right? What was the first book like? Raft of Stars was not my first book. The very first book I wrote is still a sock drawer novel. I started writing it at Lawrence University in Wisconsin when I came out of the Air Force. And I worked on that for years. I brought it to the Iowa Writers Workshop with me and worked on it for some more years. And then I got an agent for it, and I thought, man, like, this is gonna happen. She and I worked on it for 2 more years. All told, I worked on that book for 7 years. And then they finally sent it off to editors in New York. And I thought, here it comes. And it didn't come, yeah? And I'm paraphrasing, but I still have the emails. The editors said, basically, it's beautiful writing, you took us to a real space, but you have written a long, boring book. So I cried in my pickup truck about that, just north of Green Bay, Wisconsin. And I actually gave up writing, not gave up, but I didn't write a thing for at least 1.5 years, close to 2 years. And it was one winter night, and this'll sort of get into the talk about True North. It was one winter night in Peshtigo, Wisconsin. I was doing my first teaching job in the area in the north woods of Wisconsin. And there was a wood stove in our basement. And I was lighting fires in the wood stove because it's January in northern Wisco, right? And to light the fires in the wood stove, I was using old notes from college as kindling. I had saved all my notes, all my papers, all the handouts from college, and I had hoped that they would sort of ferment into something significant, but I ended up just setting them on fire, yeah? So I'm feeding these old notes into the wood flames, and then I came across this essay called The Nature and Aim of Fiction by Flannery O'Connor. And that essay, I would say, one, has some of the best advice on how to tell a story that I've ever read. And also that essay started me writing again. In that essay, and I didn't burn it because my professor handed it out years ago with such enthusiasm, right? That I pulled it back, there was a couch down there, I got the fire going with some, old math homework, and just read that essay again. In the essay, O'Connor puts forth her sort of 3 pillars of storytelling. Namely, and I love these because they're dead simple, but they're inexhaustible in their complexity. And I teach now at Wittenberg University in Ohio. I use this to guide my creative writing classes and our discussion in those classes. Flannery O'Connor basically says that the 3 pillars of a story are that a story needs to be concrete, it needs to be dramatic, and it needs to be meaningful. And I'm like, amen, Flannery, but how do we do it, yeah? So in terms of concrete, that night I just started writing about 2 boys pushing their bikes down a gravel road, right? O'Connor said the beginning of human knowledge is through the senses, so the fiction writer must begin where human knowledge begins. And by that, she just means you gotta let us bite into the apple instead of trying to tell us something philosophical. So I just wrote about two boys pushing their bikes down a gravel road. I could hear the gravel beneath their tires. I could smell the clover in the ditches. I put a blackbird clinging on a cattail stalk, and I didn't know who those boys were or where they were headed, but they became the characters Bread and Fish in Raft of Stars 5 years later, right? So I knew also that if I was going to enter another multi-year process of writing a novel, I was like, man, they're not going to call this one boring, right? So I had to get on Flannery O'Connor's second pillar, which is that writing should be dramatic. So should I keep going with that, or should I?
Well, let me
Yeah.
ask you a couple things. So one of the things I thought was interesting is that this book takes place, it's set in 1994. For those of us in this room, except for Ava. The students he's teaching today consider that historical fiction. But what's interesting is, like, you think back, 1994, that was 30 years ago, right? So when I was in high school, I graduated in 1990, and I remember in my senior year I had a history since Vietnam. And I remember my dad saying, "God, that's like present tense, not history." And what I love about this is that it kind of takes you out of the cell phone era and reminds you of these two boys. They're 10 years old. They don't have the cell phones and the social media pressures that a lot of kids have today, which is why I think it is wonderful for, when I say young adult safe, I'm just encouraging. I loved this book enough that I reached out to him, and he's here today, but I also think that for boys that are 12, 13, 14 years old and you're trying to get them into reading, if you know any of them, that works really well. Tell me about then, how did you figure out the drama? Because part of the drama for me is the pace of this book. The pace is fast because they're on the run after a dramatic incident. So they're on the run and they're being chased.
Yeah, thanks so much. And just to say that the book being cell phone free became a real boon, because in general it's a book about two boys on the run and their mom is looking for them in a canoe. Like a cell phone would have ruined that plot in one chapter, right? Hey boys, where are you?
Yeah, right.
Over here, mom, right? So there's like more adventure available, perhaps. For the drama for that one, I just knew I needed to make it loud. So I went back and I learned more about plot, like good old-fashioned storytelling. And one of the things that every single story has that we've seen on film or we've read or we've even told has a good old-fashioned inciting incident, some external pressure or problem, like, hey Frodo, here's a ring, get rid of it, and then off we go, right, for movies and books and chapters and things like that. So I wanted something loud enough that could get those boys off into the forest, and that came in the form of one of the boys has an abusive father, his friend takes it upon himself to free him of his abusive father, and off they go, yeah? And that was good. That was loud enough to provide some momentum for a couple chapters, and then once I knew there were 10-year-old boys in the forest. I was a new dad myself when I started writing that, so all I knew is these boys are gonna make it. I wasn't gonna write a book about boys who didn't make it. But then I knew, okay, there's going to be a sheriff somewhere looking for these boys. Somewhere there's going to be a mother character, and no black bear or river or pine forest is going to keep her from reuniting with her son. So the book, began to take up some momentum of its own at that point.
One more question about this one before we go to True North. What was it like, or when did you know? Maybe you got the letter saying this book isn't boring and we want to publish it. And then after that, like when you actually saw, what was it like when you first saw all of this?
I cried in my truck a second time. I honestly did. It was kind of a roundabout, interesting path of publication for that as well, because the book does have two 10-year-old protagonists, but it also has like an alcoholic sheriff character that's as a point of view character. So people had trouble putting it into a category. Agents, right? They're like, is this young adult? I'm not sure. Is this literary fiction? I'm not sure, right? So it got actually passed back and forth to different agents for a period of at least 6 months. And the answer was, let's just put this on the shelf for now. And I thought, oh my goodness, I did it again. Like sock drawer number 2, right? 7 years and now 5 years. However, I don't know how many months later, one of the senior agents said, hey, there's this brand new agent, Maggie Cooper. She loves this book. Would you like to talk to her? Absolutely. And then Maggie, she and I worked on it a little bit. She sent it out, and I think she sold it in about 2 weeks. Wow. And I remember getting the phone call back. I just saw a message. I was driving. It was raining. And I'm like, really? This is fast. Like, does she really have good news this soon? And man, she told me that your book, there's an editor who wants to buy this right away. And I just thanked her, and I parked on the shoulder of the road, and I cried in the rain. I really did.
It's turning into a country song.
Yeah. Same pickup truck. You know, it took a while. When I graduated college, and I knew I wanted to become a writing professor and try my hand at this stuff, and I was off to grad school. My writing professor, David McGlynn, also a great author who I love very much, said, you know, Andy, this is probably going to take you 10 years from today. And I was graduating, it was 2009. I went to college after the Air Force. And part of my like Bucky 20-something-year-old self thought, it's not gonna take me 10 years. You know what I mean? I'm gonna try it in 3 or something. But I graduated in 2009 and had that discussion, and Raft of Stars sold in 2019. It was 10 years to the day. And I'm thankful for that, really, yeah.
It is remarkable. It's so difficult for authors to find an agent, actually. There's limited books on the shelf, limited shelf space. And also it's an interesting business, it's a time of transition. What's exciting is that young people are now wanting to read more, and they want the hardcover book. I think young people are already tired of the screens, which might be really a good thing for their brains. So that's all very exciting. And so when you have a little bit of success, I would say a lot of success as a debut novel, I would say a lot, but you have a little bit of success, usually what comes with that is an opportunity to write another book. Yeah. So tell us about True North. Was this book in your mind already? And then how did you go, was there anything different of how you started to write this one versus that one based on what you had learned before?
Yeah, thanks so much. I did get the opportunity to write True North with a handful of chapters and a solid outline. And I really went at it with similar principles. Like, one, the major difference is I was very scared, right, while writing it under deadline and thinking Raft of Stars was a fluke and no one's ever going to want to talk to me again. Imposter syndrome. But I woke up every day in the morning and would work for about an hour and a half before my kids got up and I had to go to work. And that's how True North was built. It was actually kind of a sweet winter at one point because my oldest son, Levi, sort of picked up on that schedule, and he would come out early. It's pitch black, right, the middle of winter, and he would come out early and sit with me and do his math homework across the table. So we were just, drinking coffee, and he wasn't drinking coffee, he's 10, but yeah, it was a sweet time. So in terms of Flannery O'Connor's concrete, with True North, I knew I wanted to go back to the Northwoods because it's simply a place I like to be. It's home, right? That first sock drawer novel that I worked on and never sold was based on my time in Afghanistan. And I felt like I needed to write it, but it wasn't a really pleasant place to close my eyes and go visit for 7 years, right? And I tell my students this too, if you don't have an idea for a story and you just want to go inhabit some space and smell it, see it, taste it, touch it, you may as well go somewhere you enjoy, yeah? So I knew I wanted to go back to the Northwoods, to the pine forests and rivers. Regarding the drama of this one, what was going to be the noise, This one, it came out of my own life in some way. I've been a whitewater raft guide since my time in college during summers off, and I still do guide rafts down in West Virginia part-time. And I've always wanted to write about the river. And I've always had this daydream of selling everything, yeah? Cashing out the retirement, buying some little ramshackle whitewater rafting outfit, and like living the van life. To me, that'd be living the dream, yeah? So I was able to give that to the main character, Sam. I packed Sam and his 3 kids and his wife, Swami, into a Winnebago and said, here you go. Writing this book was a way to live that dream without ruining my own life. You know? One reviewer said that Sam, the protagonist, one of the protagonists, the 2 point of view characters are the husband and wife. But one reviewer said that Sam is going to remind a lot of women of their first husband. And it's like, whatever. You know? Yeah, that made me chuckle. So that was fun, and that caused enough problems. Sam was an art teacher about to lose his job. They went all in on this. Their marriage was already on the rocks, and they had to go make it work by summer. Restore this old rafting company called Woodchuck Rafting Company. I said, yeah, that's enough noise. You know, that's enough momentum to get going. So once I started writing it, and then I'll hand it back to you. But I want to talk about Flannery's 3rd pillar. Writing has to be concrete, dramatic, but it also has to be meaningful. And this is where like the stuff of theme comes in, the stuff of questions to explore in a book. So for this one, the question came from Whitewater itself. I was interested in the question about how to hold mystery is one way to say it. The disparity between expectations, I think I'm going to go get this rafting company, it's going to be this way, and that's the vision, and the reality I get, right? The rafting company's in a lot worse shape, and so am I, says the main character, and so is this marriage that's now placed into a camper van, right? And there's a gap there, and I was interested, how do you hold the gap between what you would like and what is? And then I found in the river itself, within rafting culture itself, a really rich metaphor for this. So, in whitewater training, in 2017 I went down and checked out on the New River and went through like a 2-week-long guide school. I was pushing 40 at the time. Biggest whitewater I've ever seen in my life. It scared the pants off me, but I made it. One of the sayings they drill into you is the saying, give up and square up. Give up and square up. We heard it over and over and over. And what it means is, if you are dropping into a big class 5 rapid and there's some big boulder downstream called the meat grinder, and you do not want to hit the meat grinder, right? You have to be very, very far away from that. You drop in, you turn sideways, you paddle like mad. But there are times when, despite all your paddling, something goes wrong and you're just going to hit that boulder or that big nasty hole in the river. At that point, there comes this terrifying moment of like clarity and admission, and it's sort of a radical acceptance of reality in real time. I am going to hit that boulder. Do I want to hit it sideways and we'll all be smoked out here? Or do I want to accept reality, stop running from the problem, and face it head on? To give up means give up trying to run away and square up. Just face it, yeah? And I thought, oh my gosh. One, that's a very frightening thing to do on the river, to radically accept what is. I did not want to hit that boulder. But then I started asking myself, all right, what does it mean to give up and square up in other parts of life? Here's this small town of Thunderwater that these characters travel to. And they're wrestling with economic needs versus the health of their environment. There's a mining company coming to town. What does it mean to give up and square up in a small business? What does it mean to give up and square up in a Winnebago camper van regarding your marriage? Yeah? This is not the path, like this is not the vision, this is not the ideal I would have chosen. I've wrestled it as much as I can. Now I need to radically accept what actually is. Oh, that was my study at the table all those mornings. And I'm still trying to figure it out. And I kind of see it as the difference between brand new river guides and more seasoned river guides. I love watching video of whitewater raft guides. I love studying the lines and watching them. And you can always tell a rookie river guide because they are all muscle and strength and panic and fear. And they will paddle so hard to get away from something, they'll overcorrect, then they'll end up hurting their shoulders because they're using all this strength out there. I'm like, man, that was like all of my 20s and most of my 30s. Like, I will shape this cosmos into the form I desire it to be, yeah? I got a plan. And then I failed enough and was humiliated